to Chimes at Midnight and part 3 of our series on martinis. Happily, we begin here today in 1930 with the Repeal of Prohibition.
Yes!
We have to thank, particularly for the way he celebrated the Repeal of Prohibition, is right here. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who, after signing the law that sent prohibition to its grave, mixed and shook a martini. His shaker, by the way, is in the Roosevelt Library these days, because he loved to make martinis, and he was really not very good at it, apparently, but he did a lot of it. Anyway, partly because celebrities like the president, but others, Ernest Hemingway, as we've already discussed a little bit, and films in Hollywood. A movie that comes to mind is the 1934 film The Thin Man, where the real star of that movie is the martini. The martini became the quintessential, the icon cocktail of America. The most important cocktail writer of the 40s and 50s was actually a lawyer named David Embry, who loved to drink. He lived in New York City. And Embry, in his book on cocktails, prescribes a 7-to-1 ratio of gin to vermouth. And it's not long after that we see the appearance of the Montgomery Martini. The Montgomery was named for the British general who is said to have liked the ratio of 15-to-1 in his troops. That is 15 on my side and 1 on their side before he was going to battle. And he replicated that in his martini. 15 parts gin to 1 part vermouth. Well, it was a short step from there to Phil's cold glass of gin. There was a lot more about martinis during that period, during the 50s and into the 60s, when there were even jokes where, for example, the idea was, if you've had a bottle of vermouth in the room today, remove it before you make my martini. So anyway, we got pretty quickly to the cold glass of gin. Happily, we home bartenders can go other places because we have the ingredients and we have the skill. And what we'd like to do now is offer you an alternative to that cold glass of gin. It's a very old drink. It goes back to the late 19th centuries, but you don't see it very much, and it's called the Tuxedo Number Two. So Al's going to mix one of these up for us right now. First, he's got a big cube out of the freezer, put it into our stirring glass. He's going to use 2 ounces of gin. We've stuck with Beefeater, except for that wonderful Bar Hill earlier when we made the Martinez. So 2 ounces of Beefeater. Yeah, and you remember this is the classic ratio, 2 parts gin to 1 part vermouth, so we'll have an ounce of Yolanda dry. And I don't know if you remember, but we used a little bit of Luxardo Maraschino way back in the martinis. Well, we're going to use the same amount, 1/4 ounce of Luxardo. And then we're going to apply 4 real dashes. We'll have more to say about dashes later on. So that's a pretty strong dose of orange bitters. That's what the recipe prescribed, but I happen to like a lot of bitters in many cocktails, and this is certainly one of them. And the last part, and maybe in many ways the most interesting, and this has been classically true of martinis ever since the late 19th century, is a rinse. Today what we're going to use for our rinse, Alex has just gotten our glass out. We're not using a martini glass today, but we're going to rinse with absinthe. So it's a frozen glass because we want this Tuxedo Number Two to be very cold, so let's just have a rinse. That is a sizable rinse, which we love here. And to do that, I get to do this part because at Chimes at Midnight, if you read a manual, they're going to say, throw that rinse away. Well, we'll throw it away. Wormwood can make you crazy, so I'm not responsible for what might happen next. So, rinse. By the way, you could use as a rinse other things. For example, chartreuse, yellow or green. It's a perfect rinse for this drink, and will change its character enough so that you'll notice the slight differences. And depending on what your tastes are, may improve it. But it's hard to beat absinthe, I'll say. And there we go. Now, because it's stirred and not shaken, it's got the clarity that we love in a martini. I wouldn't mind having a twist. I don't know if the recipe calls for it, but I think a twist could be good here. Look at that, he even has it ready and everything. Huh? This man is well trained. So there you go. This is a Tuxedo Number Two. Oh my God. That's a wonderful drink. You know, I don't want to say too much, but just to say, we've gone from the Martinis, which is sweet and soft and a delicious drink on a cold winter night in front of a fire, to a Tuxedo Number Two, which has a bit of sweetness, but it's also dry, and it's deep and resonant, and with that absinthe, and you know, who knows, maybe you could use chartreuse and absinthe at the same time. You know, rinse it, the more rinses the better, I don't know, but it's a delightful drink. And the real point being, and the real place that we want to take you in this series is that as home bartenders, we know how to mix these things. We can go from a glass of cold gin to a drink that's not, you know, not that complicated, but requires some mixology experience, some bottles in your house, to a drink that is a perfect way to end a winter or that summer's night. Thanks for coming, and soon we're going to have a video for you on another cocktail called the Spruce Goose, where we're going to spend some time talking about cocktails that rely heavily on bitters, which have been basically reinvented here in the 21st century. Thanks for coming.